The night was unusually silent, the kind of silence that presses against your ears and makes every small sound feel like an intruder. Streetlights flickered as he moved along the deserted road, his heart hammering against his ribcage. He adjusted the dark hoodie over his head, pulling it lower to conceal his face, and checked the small flashlight in his pocket. This was supposed to be an easy job. A quick in and out, grab what he could and vanish into the shadows before anyone noticed. He had done it countless times, but tonight, there was a gnawing unease crawling up his spine. Something felt off, but he brushed it aside. He had bills to pay, and desperation didn't leave room for second thoughts. The house in front of him looked exactly like the one he had targeted from the photos he had stolen days ago. A two-story building with faint porch lights. A car parked slightly askew in the driveway. He approached cautiously, listening for the hum of electronics or voices. There was nothing. Just the rustling of the wind against the trees and the occasional creak of the siding. He picked the lock in under a minute, a skill honed from months of practice, and slipped inside. The house smelled of vanilla and something else he couldn't quite place. A mix of old wood and faint perfume. His flashlight cut through the darkness, illuminating framed family photos on the walls. A man in a crisp suit smiled with a little girl on his lap. A woman leaned on his shoulder, her eyes warm. A pang of guilt stabbed at him, but he swallowed it. This wasn't about morality, it was about survival. He moved silently from room to room, scanning for valuables, the adrenaline buzzing in his veins. As he entered what appeared to be the master bedroom, the beam of his flashlight caught something strange. A photograph on the nightstand he hadn't noticed in the pictures he studied. It was the same family, but in this one the little girl looked older, maybe 16 or 17, and behind her was a man he didn't recognize. A chill ran down his spine, but he shook it off. Mistaken memories. Nothing more. Then he heard it, a faint creak above him. His pulse spiked. Footsteps. Slow, deliberate. Someone was in the house. He froze, heart hammering. Whoever it was, they were moving with purpose. He ducked behind the open door, holding his breath, trying to steady the trembling in his hands. A shadow passed by the top of the staircase, and then a voice, low and calm but carrying a dangerous edge. "Who's there?" The intruder's confidence faltered for the first time that night. He didn't answer, but his mind raced. He could run, disappear into the night, but something held him in place. Curiosity, foolish bravery, maybe both. Another step. Then another. He could feel the eyes of the person upstairs searching, probing, aware that something was wrong. He realized with sudden terror that he might not be alone, and whatever waited in the dark was not going to be patient. A loud crash came from the kitchen, metal hitting tile. The person or people were moving faster now. Panic clawed at him. He ducked lower, almost tripping over a rug, and in that instant, he realized the house didn't match the blueprints he memorized. It wasn't the same layout. The kitchen had an island that shouldn't have been there, and the hallway twisted in ways the original photos didn't show. His chest tightened. He had broken into the wrong house. Outside, the wind howled through the trees, and somewhere, a dog barked, sharp and angry. The man upstairs spoke again, more forcefully this time. "I know you're in there. You better come out before it gets worse for you." The voice was not threatening, at least not yet, but it carried an authority that made the intruder hesitate. Fear, real and immediate, gripped him. He was not dealing with an ordinary family. Something darker lurked here, something he could feel pressing against the edges of his mind. He moved toward the window, planning a silent escape, but then a faint movement in the corner of the room caught his eye. A figure, almost blending into the shadows, watching him. Not human, or maybe human but not quite right. His flashlight flickered, and he cursed under his breath. The figure didn't move, didn't blink, just stared. His rational mind screamed to leave, but the thought of running upstairs or confronting the shadow filled him with dread. Then the lights in the hallway flickered on, and he saw them, two children standing silently, their faces pale, eyes unblinking, staring directly at him. "Why are you here?" one of them asked, voice eerily calm. The intruder froze, realizing the danger he had walked into. This was no ordinary house, no ordinary family. And whatever secrets lay hidden within these walls were about to unfold, dragging him into a night of terror, mistakes, and moral reckoning he could never escape. He swallowed hard, trying to steady his breathing, but the words stuck in his throat. I thought this was, he started but stopped. Any lie would feel hollow. And the sudden awareness that he had no control over the situation pressed down on him like a weight. The two children didn't flinch, didn't move closer or back away. They just stared, unervingly calm. And yet something in their eyes suggested they understood far more than any children should. Footsteps echoed from the staircase. A man appeared at the top, tall, broad-shouldered, dressed in dark clothing. His face was obscured by shadow, but there was a sharpness in his movements that made the intruder shrink back instinctively. The man's gaze swept the room, lingering on the intruder with an intensity that made his blood run cold. "You shouldn't be here," he said, his voice low but carrying an unmistakable threat. I made a mistake," the intruder stammered, trying to find a foothold, a reason, anything to buy himself time. But the man's eyes didn't soften. Instead, he tilted his head slightly, studying him, and the silence that followed felt heavier than any threat. Then, without another word, he stepped aside, motioning for the intruder to come closer. Hesitation warred with survival instincts, but something about the calm, calculated presence forced him forward. As he approached, the man spoke again. "Do you know what happens to people who enter this house uninvited?" The intruder shook his head, voice barely audible. "No. They die," the man said simply. Not yelling, not threatening, just stating a fact. But the way he said it, with certainty, made the intruder's stomach turn. He had assumed tonight would be like any other job, quick, impersonal, but now the air felt heavy, suffocating, as if the house itself were closing in suddenly. A sound from behind him, a soft creak, made him spin around. One of the children had moved slowly, deliberately, to the door leading downstairs. "He doesn't belong here," the child said softly, almost a whisper. "Not tonight." The intruder realized then that there was something profoundly wrong with this place. The layouts, the silence, the eyes that seemed to see through him. Everything was wrong. But fear alone couldn't drive him away. The adrenaline and desperation that had brought him here still pulsed in his veins. Maybe he could talk his way out. Maybe he could escape. Maybe he could survive. The man moved closer, each step deliberate, echoing in the silent room. "You have choices," he said. "Most people only have one." "Choices?" the intruder echoed, his voice cracking. I'll leave. I'll go. I don't want trouble." The man's expression was unreadable. "Leaving isn't the choice, I mean. You can leave alive. Or you can stay and face what you were really meant to confront tonight." The words made no sense at first, but then the intruder felt it. A creeping realization that this encounter was more than a robbery gone wrong. This house, the family, the strange calm in the children's eyes, it all pointed to something hidden. Something waiting to punish the reckless, or maybe to reveal secrets that were better left buried. Suddenly, a door slammed shut upstairs. The sound jolted him. The man's gaze followed the noise, and then he looked back at the intruder, sharp, commanding. "Do you hear that? That's the first test. Most people don't pass." "What test?" the intruder whispered, panic rising. Every instinct screamed to run, but there was nowhere to go. The windows were too high, the front door blocked by shadows that seemed to flicker unnaturally. The house had become a trap, and he was in its center. A second child emerged from the hallway, holding something small in her hands. She extended it toward him. A photograph, torn and stained, showing the intruder himself, but not from tonight. From years ago, standing outside a convenience store. A camera catching him committing a petty crime. His stomach twisted. How could they have this? He had never been seen. He had covered his tracks. The man stepped closer, voice calm but cutting. "We know everything. Everyone leaves a mark, even if they think no one is watching. You are here because you cannot escape who you are. Not from yourself and not from us." The intruder felt panic turning into dread, then into something else, remorse, fear, guilt all tangled together, clawing at him like fire. The adrenaline that had powered him through countless crimes was useless here. The house didn't care about survival or luck. Cared about reckoning. And then the lights flickered and went out entirely. Total darkness. A whisper of movement passed over him, something fast, almost liquid in its speed. The children's voices echoed from all directions, singing a lullaby he couldn't recognize, hauntingly slow. The man's presence seemed to multiply, shadows moving independently. Panic became terror as he realized he was completely trapped, alone but not alone, in a house that judged, punished, and watched. He stumbled backward, crashing into the furniture. A drawer flew open, scattering old letters across the floor. He caught one, freezing as he read the words. "We see what you hide. We know your sins. There is no hiding now." Fear gripped him so completely that his chest ached. He wanted to scream, to run, to beg, but the air felt too heavy. And then from somewhere deep in the house, a voice, not the man's, not the children's, but a whisper so low it seemed to come from the walls themselves, spoke a single word. "Choose." The word choose reverberated through the darkness, echoing off the walls, rattling the intruder's mind. His chest heaved, sweat prickling at his temples. He stumbled backward, trying to find a wall, a window, anything familiar. But every surface felt wrong. The hallway stretched and bent, doors appearing where none should exist, shadows shifting like living things. The house was alive, or at least it felt alive, and he was its prey. "Choose what?" he croaked, voice trembling. He didn't expect an answer, yet the silence that followed felt oppressive, as if the house itself waited for his confession. The children's lullaby continued, soft and eerie, weaving through the walls, wrapping around his mind like chains. Then the lights flickered back on. The room he was in had changed entirely. The furniture was gone. The walls were bare, except for photographs lining the floor. Each one depicted him in moments he thought no one had seen. Small crimes, moments of selfishness, lies he told to get ahead. Each photo was a silent accusation, a mirror to the parts of himself he tried to hide. The man stepped closer. "Your life has been a series of choices. Some were small, some were cruel. And tonight, you're faced with another." The intruder shook, backing away. I don't know what you want from me. I just needed money. That's all. Please," his voice cracked. Desperation made him sound like a child pleading for mercy. "Mercy is earned, not demanded," the man said. "And tonight you either face your truth, or you face the consequences." The children stepped forward, holding more photographs, old letters, and a small box. Inside the box were objects from his past, things he had stolen, things he had discarded, things that were supposed to be forgotten. Each item carried weight, memories of deceit, fear, and betrayal. The intruder realized with growing horror that this wasn't just a house or a family. It was a mirror, a reckoning, a living judgment of everything he had done. I can make it right," he stammered, though even he didn't fully believe it. He reached for the box, but one of the children held it out of reach. "Not yet," the child said softly. "You must choose the first step." "What first step?" he demanded, panic rising. "I'll do anything." The man's eyes glinted in the dim light. "The step that proves you understand the cost of your actions. The truth you have hidden, the lies you've told, the people you've hurt. Tell us now. Or leave and suffer in ignorance." The intruder hesitated. Memories flooded him. Faces he had deceived, friendships destroyed, opportunities stolen. Each memory was a knife twisting in his chest. I've hurt people," he admitted, voice shaking. I've stolen, lied, betrayed. I never meant to. I just needed." "You never needed," the man said. "You chose." The words cut through him like ice. Guilt and fear collided with anger at himself, creating a storm in his mind. The children moved closer, their eyes unblinking, their presence suffocating. He could feel their judgment, but also something else: expectation, patience, a strange empathy. Suddenly, a door slammed open behind him. He spun around, flashlight beam cutting through the shadows, and froze. A figure emerged from the darkness. A woman, her face partially hidden, but her eyes sharp, filled with a kind of wrath that made him shrink back. "And you think confession alone saves you?" she asked. Her voice was smooth, dangerous, commanding. I'm trying," he shouted, his voice rising in panic. I don't want trouble. I'll do anything." "You've said that before," she replied. "But you never truly understood what your actions meant. Tonight you will see." Before he could react, the floor beneath him seemed to shift, tilting like a trapdoor. He stumbled, arms flailing, barely catching himself on the wall. The man's voice followed him. "The house tests everyone. Not by force alone, but by reflection. Look at yourself." Desperate, the intruder looked around. Every mirror, every reflective surface, no matter how small, now showed him not just his image, but moments of his past intertwined with something else. Faces of the people he had wronged, their eyes accusing, their expressions twisted in fear, anger, betrayal. Each reflection was a story, a consequence he could no longer deny. He sank to the floor, head in his hands, shaking. I don't know what to do," he whispered. Tears mixed with sweat. For the first time in his life, the adrenaline that had carried him through thefts, break-ins, and lies offered no comfort. He was completely exposed, vulnerable, facing truths he could no longer ignore. The children knelt beside him. One placed a hand lightly on his shoulder. "Facing it is the first step," she said. "But do not be mistaken. This night is not yet over. Choices come in layers, each one deeper than the last." The intruder looked up, fear and confusion warring in his gaze. "Layers? What do you mean?" The man's face emerged from shadow, calm, almost serene. "This house, it does not forgive. It does not forget. You have begun to confront your truth, but the night is far from finished. What you see, what you face, and what you decide next will determine if you leave at all." A sudden noise, glass breaking, made him jerk around. In the far corner of the room, a dark figure lurked, almost hidden, watching silently. He realized then that the house held more than judgment. It held secrets, dangers, and tests he had not yet imagined. Every instinct screamed to run, but he was already trapped, ensnared by his own choices, and by forces far beyond his comprehension. And then, as the shadows seemed to twist and reach for him, the children's voices rose together, echoing in a haunting harmony. "Your choices brought you here. Face them, or be lost." The intruder's mind raced. Every option felt deadly, every movement risky. The house had become a labyrinth of fear, guilt, and moral reckoning, and he realized with bone-deep certainty that this night would change him forever, if he survived at all. The intruder scrambled to his feet, legs trembling, heart hammering so violently, he thought it might burst from his chest. Every instinct screamed to flee, yet the house offered no clear exit. Shadows shifted along the walls, stretching like fingers reaching for him, and the air carried a faint metallic scent that made his stomach churn. He felt trapped not just by walls, but by his own mistakes, each step a reminder of the life he had tried to live in secrecy. The man stepped closer, his presence almost suffocating, his calm authority unwavering. "You think surviving the night is about avoiding harm," he said, "but it's about understanding it. Every action has weight. You've carried yours lightly, until now." The intruder swallowed hard, trembling. I don't know what to say. I never thought. The man's voice cut through him like glass. "You never thought, yet you acted. Tonight you will confront not just your fears but your choices." A sudden crash from upstairs made him spin. The floorboards groaned as if something heavy had moved above him. The children's lullaby faded, replaced by silence so intense it pressed against his eardrums. Then came a whisper, soft, almost inside his mind. "He's ready. He must see the truth." The intruder's eyes darted around the room, catching movement in the corners. Shadows coalesced into vague forms, faint silhouettes that flickered and vanished when he tried to focus on them. His flashlight, still clutched in a shaking hand, flickered, casting eerie, dancing light on the walls. He realized with growing horror that the house itself was alive in ways he couldn't comprehend, and everything he had ever done to avoid consequences mattered nothing here. One of the children stepped closer, holding a single photograph. It was him, but younger, in the moment of a choice he remembered all too well. A petty theft at a grocery store, a lie to a friend, a betrayal of trust. His stomach twisted as he stared at the image. I didn't," he began, voice cracking, but the child shook her head. "You did," she said simply, her tone devoid of malice yet filled with an unshakable truth. "And now you must face it." The man circled him slowly. "Each person who comes here is given a chance. Not for forgiveness, not for mercy, for truth. The question is whether you have the courage to see it, or the fear to hide and perish." A cold draft swept through the room, rattling the remaining furniture. The intruder backed into a corner, eyes wide, body trembling uncontrollably. I understand," he whispered, though he knew he didn't. I want to make it right." Actions speak louder than words, the man said. Tonight you will act or be consumed. Suddenly the room seemed to shift. Walls extended and contracted. Doors appeared where none existed, and a hallway of mirrors opened before him. Each mirror reflected not only his image but every choice, every deceit, every moment of cowardice and greed. Faces of those he had wronged stared back at him, silently judging, accusing, and waiting. He stumbled into the hallway, panic threatening to overwhelm him. Every step seemed to stretch time, every mirror a trap. One reflection showed a child he had bullied, another a friend he had betrayed for money. Each face whispered accusations he could barely bear to hear. Why? Why me? Why lie? Their voices, faint but piercing, intertwined with the house itself. The children appeared on either side of him, their hands brushing the mirrors. See, one said, not just who you are but who you have hurt. The intruder fell to his knees, hands over his face. Tears blurred his vision. For the first time in his life, the adrenaline, the thefts, the running, all of it felt meaningless. He had never truly considered the consequences beyond himself. Now, confronted by the ghosts of his past, he understood the weight of every choice he had ever made. A sudden voice, deeper, older, resonated through the hall. You will continue or you will remain here forever. The intruder looked up. The man stood at the far end of the mirrored corridor, calm, almost serene, yet radiating a quiet menace that made the intruder flinch. The choice is yours, he said. Swallowing the lump in his throat, the intruder nodded, tears streaming down his face. I'll face it. All of it. Tell me what I must do. The children moved aside, revealing a door that hadn't been there before. Through the crack, faint light spilled, warm but impossible. The man gestured toward it. Through that door lies the culmination of your choices. Enter and face the consequences. Only then can the night end. Every nerve in his body screamed to run, to escape, but he knew the house would not let him leave without confronting the truth. Taking a shaky breath, he rose to his feet, wiping tears from his cheeks. He approached the door slowly, each step heavy with dread and the understanding that the night would demand everything from him. Courage, honesty, remorse, and perhaps more than he could give. And then, as he reached for the doorknob, the shadows in the room seemed to twist and gather behind him, whispering in unison. Choose wisely, for nothing is as it seems. His hand trembled as it touched the cold metal of the doorknob. The faint light seeping through the crack seemed almost alive, pulsing with a rhythm that matched the frantic beat of his heart. Every instinct screamed to stop, to flee back into the shadows of the room, but the house offered no escape now. The man's eyes, sharp and unwavering, followed him like a predator watching prey. Taking a deep, shuddering breath, he pushed the door open. The light spilled into the corridor, revealing a room unlike any he had seen before. The walls were lined with clocks, each ticking at different speeds, the hands spinning erratically, some even moving backward. The floor beneath him seemed to ripple, soft and yielding like sand, and in the center of the room stood a large table covered with objects, letters, photographs, broken toys, and trinkets from countless lives. Each object radiated a history, a story of mistakes, regrets, and choices that had led to consequences. He approached the table cautiously. A photograph caught his eye. A family he had deceived years ago, one that had trusted him blindly, now shattered because of his selfishness. He dropped to his knees, hands trembling as guilt and shame coursed through him like wildfire. I didn't know, he whispered, though deep down he knew it was a lie. He had known. He had always known, but greed and fear had blinded him. A sudden movement made him snap his head up. The man was there, standing silently in the doorway, shadowed but commanding. Knowing is not enough, he said. Action is what redeems. Will you act, or will you remain broken by your past? The intruder's chest heaved. I'll act, he choked. Tell me what I have to do. The man gestured toward the objects on the table. Pick. Face them one by one. Speak the truth aloud. Only by confronting every lie, every theft, every betrayal can you hope to leave. Fear surged through him, but he forced himself forward. His fingers hovered over the items, selecting a broken watch first. It was from a man he had robbed years ago, leaving him penniless and humiliated. He held it close, voice shaking. I stole from you. I lied to cover my tracks. I was selfish and cowardly. I am sorry. The clock hands on the wall slowed, the erratic ticking calming slightly. The shadows in the room seemed to lean closer, listening. One by one, he picked up items. A torn photograph from a failed friendship, letters he had ignored, mementos of betrayals too numerous to count. Each confession drew a whisper from the shadows, approving, judging, or lamenting. Hours seemed to pass in minutes. The intruder's voice grew hoarse from speaking, tears streaking down his face. His body shook with exhaustion, but still he pressed on, facing truths he had long buried, confronting every selfish choice and deceit that had defined his life. The house demanded nothing less than complete reckoning. Suddenly a low hum filled the room. The clock stopped ticking entirely, and the shadows gathered, forming a figure in the center of the room. A woman, her face familiar now, terrifyingly so. The intruder froze, recognition striking him like lightning. She was the wife of the man he had hurt most deeply, the one whose life he had destroyed through lies and theft. Her eyes glowed with a strange light, equal parts anger and sorrow. "You dare enter my home, thinking it your crime alone to pay for?" she said softly, voice resonant and cold. "Every action has consequences, but tonight is about truth. Do you understand?" I do," he whispered, choking on the words. I see it all now. I've hurt so many people. I've been blind, selfish. I'll accept whatever comes. Please teach me how to make it right." The woman stepped closer, and for the first time, the intruder felt a flicker of something else, hope. "To leave here," she said, "you must not only confess, but you must carry the weight of your choices. True redemption is never easy." The man appeared at her side, nodding slowly. "The night has been long, but your reckoning is not yet complete. One final choice remains. You may leave the house forever changed, bearing the burden of your sins, or you may attempt to undo what you have done at great cost. Decide." The intruder's mind raced. Every nerve screamed to leave, to escape the terror. But deep down he knew that escaping without change would mean the house would follow him, haunting him, consuming him. The cost of redemption was unknown, terrifying. But staying as he was, broken and guilty, was unthinkable. With trembling hands he whispered, I choose to make it right, no matter the cost." A silence fell over the room, thick and heavy, as if the house itself paused to acknowledge his decision. The woman and the man stepped aside, the shadows receding. The clocks slowly resumed their ticking, steady and calm, and the objects on the table began to fade, absorbed back into the walls as if they had never existed. The intruder fell to his knees, exhaustion overwhelming him. Tears mixed with relief, fear, and a newfound clarity. He had survived the night, but survival had come at a cost far greater than any money, far deeper than any fear. He had confronted himself in ways he never imagined possible. From the doorway the woman's voice echoed softly, almost a whisper. "Remember this night. Carry it with you. Do not forget the truth you have faced, for it is the only light that will guide you through darkness." The man's voice followed, steady and unwavering. "And know this, every choice you make from now on will define you. Redemption is not a moment. It is a lifetime." As the intruder stumbled toward the front door, the house seemed to release him, the shadows dissolving into the corners, the air growing lighter, almost forgiving. He paused once at the threshold, looking back at the empty, silent rooms, the memories of his reckoning etched into his mind forever. With a final shuddering breath, he stepped into the night, the cool air brushing against his face. The street was quiet, unremarkable, yet the intruder knew nothing would ever be the same. He had faced his past, his fears and his guilt. And though the night had ended, the lessons would stay, haunting him in ways both painful and necessary, shaping the man he would become. He stumbled into the night, the cool air hitting his face like a shock. His legs wobbled, every step heavy with exhaustion and the weight of what he had endured. The street was deserted, the faint glow of streetlights casting long shadows on the pavement. For a moment he thought he had escaped, that the nightmare had ended. But the echoes of the house, the whispers of the children, and the stern, unforgiving eyes of the man and woman lingered in his mind, following him like ghosts. He didn't notice at first the car parked across the street. Its headlights were off, but the engine hummed softly, a quiet, menacing presence. As he approached, a figure stepped out, A man younger than the one in the house, but with the same intensity in his eyes. Panic surged in him. Was this another trap? Another test? He froze. You made it out, the young man said, voice calm but sharp. Most don't. Few even begin to understand what this night demands. But surviving alone is meaningless if you don't act. What do you mean? The intruder asked, voice hoarse, his mind still reeling from the night's horrors. I've seen the truth. I face my choices. Isn't that enough? The man shook his head slowly. Enough? Survival isn't redemption. Confession isn't enough. The world you've wronged still suffers from your past actions. You can't undo it all, but you can start to repair the damage. That's the next step. The intruder swallowed hard. He had thought simply leaving the house would be enough, that he had paid some price for his sins by enduring the terror and confrontation. But now, confronted with the reality that consequences extend beyond himself, fear and responsibility collided in his chest. You must choose whom to confront first, the young man continued. Not all choices will be easy. Some will bring anger, some betrayal, some heartbreak. And some may force you to face truths you've hidden even from yourself. He nodded slowly, a cold determination settling over him. He would begin with those he had hurt most directly. He would apologize, make amends, and accept whatever they chose to do. Every stolen object, every lie, every betrayal would need to be faced. Fear still clawed at him, but for the first time in years, it was tempered by a strange, fragile courage. The young man gestured toward the road. Go. But know this, the house watches. Not now, but always. Choices made tonight echo through your life. Do not forget. As the intruder walked away, the street seemed to stretch endlessly, the shadows deep and alive. He passed houses, empty windows like unblinking eyes, each one reminding him of the fragility of what he had learned. But amidst the lingering fear, a strange clarity emerged. His life would never be the same, but maybe, just maybe, he could begin to live differently. Hours later, he found himself outside the first victim's home, a man whose trust he had shattered years ago. The intruder's hand shook as he rang the doorbell. Every muscle in his body screamed to flee, to hide, but he had made his choice. He would confront the consequences, face the anger, and own his mistakes. The door opened slowly. The man on the other side stared, recognition flashing in his eyes, quickly replaced by suspicion and guarded anger. You, he demanded, voice harsh. After all these years, why? I know I've hurt you, the intruder said, voice quivering but honest. I was selfish. I lied. I stole. I can't undo the past, but I want to make it right. Please hear me out. The man's eyes narrowed, a storm of emotions crossing his face. Silence stretched between them, tense and heavy. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, the man stepped aside. Come in. Speak your truth. Actions, not excuses now. As he entered the house, the intruder felt the weight of the night pressing down once more. The house had released him physically, but the lessons, the reckoning, the truth, it all followed him. Each confession, each act of repair, each step forward would carry the imprint of what he had endured. And in the darkness outside, as he faced the consequences of his past, a whisper, soft, almost imperceptible, echoed in his mind. The night has ended, but the journey has only begun. The intruder sat across from the man whose life he had disrupted. Words caught in his throat as he struggled to articulate years of guilt and regret. Each confession felt like tearing a piece of himself away, exposing raw, shameful wounds. I took from you, he began, voice trembling. I lied. I betrayed your trust. I can't undo it, but I want to try. I want to make it right. The man stared at him, silence heavy between them, the air thick with unspoken anger and pain. Finally, he spoke, voice low and measured. You can't erase the past. You can't bring back what was lost. But you can do better from this moment forward. That's all anyone can ask. The intruder nodded, tears streaking his face. Relief and fear collided in his chest. Relief that this man might hear him, might give him a chance to amend, and fear that he had no idea how long, how difficult, or how painful the path ahead would be. I'll do whatever it takes, he whispered. Tell me what I need to do. The man's eyes softened slightly, though the weight of betrayal lingered. You will begin by facing those you've wronged directly. Apologies are words, but actions are proof. Fix what you can. Be honest. Be accountable. And do not shy away from the consequences. The intruder swallowed hard, nodding again. Every nerve in his body felt alive with tension, the lessons of the night embedding themselves deep in his mind. The encounters would not be easy. Some would bring anger, others disbelief, and some might reject him entirely. But he had chosen this path. He had faced the house, faced his own fears and moral failures. Now he would face the world scarred but wiser. He left the house with a new sense of purpose, every step deliberate, every breath conscious. The shadows seemed less oppressive now, though he still felt the lingering presence of the house, a reminder that nothing could be taken lightly. Outside, the night was quiet, unnervingly calm, as though the world itself waited to see if he would honor the lessons learned. He made his way to the next victim, a woman whose trust he had betrayed in another petty crime long ago. Her house was dark, silent, the faint glow of a kitchen light illuminating her silhouette. She looked up at him as he approached, recognition flashing in her eyes, quickly followed by skepticism. "You?" she asked, voice tight, wary. "After all this time, what are you doing here?" "I know I hurt you," he said, voice earnest. "I stole from you, lied to you. I can't undo the past, but I want to try to make it right. Please hear me out." She studied him silently, every muscle tense, and then gestured for him to come inside. The living room was modest, the remnants of her life scattered with quiet care. She didn't speak at first, letting him find the words, letting him confess fully. He spoke of his mistakes, his lies, the selfishness that had guided his choices for years. Every word felt like a weight being lifted, yet it was also the heaviest thing he had ever borne. "You realize it won't be easy," she finally said, voice trembling slightly. "Forgiveness isn't guaranteed. Trust isn't rebuilt overnight. You have to live with the consequences of your actions." "I understand," he said quietly. "I accept that. I want to try anyway. Whatever it takes." The evening stretched into night as he spoke, each confession accompanied by silence, occasional tears, moments of tension. Each person he faced was different. Some angry, some wary, some silent with disbelief, but all required honesty, courage, and a willingness to bear the weight of the past. Hours passed. Exhaustion threatened to consume him, yet a strange clarity had taken root. The terror of the house, the reckoning it demanded, had changed him. Fear and shame still lingered, but now they were guides, not chains. Every step toward repairing what he had broken was both punishment and redemption, a balance he had never known before. Finally, as dawn began to break, he found himself alone on a quiet street, the sky tinged with the first soft hues of light. He looked back, half expecting to see shadows following, to hear whispers reminding him of the night's horrors. But there was nothing, only silence and a fragile sense of hope, delicate and new, like a seed planted in the ashes of guilt. He realized then that the night's true lesson was not just fear, not just punishment, but understanding. The understanding that every choice carried weight, every action had consequences, and redemption was a path, not a destination. And in the quiet dawn, he whispered to himself, voice soft but steady, "I survived, but I will never forget." The intruder walked slowly down the empty street, the early morning light washing over the world in gentle gold and pink. Everything felt surreal. He had survived the night, confronted his past, and begun to make amends. Yet, the weight of the house, the shadows, the whispers, and the moral reckoning still clung to him like a second skin. Every heartbeat reminded him that survival had not erased guilt, and that redemption was a lifelong journey. He reached the last address on his list, the hardest one of all. The family whose lives he had shattered most profoundly. Memories of the robbery, the lies, and the pain he had caused came rushing back, each one stabbing at him sharper than the night before. His legs shook as he rang the doorbell. The seconds stretched, tension coiling in his chest like a spring ready to snap. The door opened slowly. A woman stood there, arms crossed, eyes wary. Recognition flickered in her gaze, quickly replaced by a hardened skepticism. "You?" she asked, voice low, guarded. "After everything, why are you here?" "I've come to face what I've done," he said, voice trembling but earnest. "I can't undo the past. I can't erase the pain I caused. But I want to try. I want to make amends in any way I can. Please let me explain. The woman studied him silently, tension radiating from her in waves. The air was thick with anger, disappointment, and fear. The same emotions he had unleashed years ago. After a long moment, she stepped aside. Come in. Speak your truth, she said. Inside, the house felt alive with memories he had once destroyed. Photos on the walls, reminders of trust shattered and innocence betrayed, seemed to stare at him, silently judging. He sank into a chair, head bowed, and began recounting every lie, every theft, every betrayal. He spoke without pause, voice raw with shame, tears streaming down his face. He told the truth in ways he had never allowed himself to, unflinching, honest, and painfully vulnerable. The silence that followed was unbearable. He waited for anger, for rejection, for the fury he expected to receive. But slowly, almost imperceptibly, the woman's posture softened. Her eyes remained wary, but there was a glimmer of something new, acknowledgement. The intruder realized then that while the pain could never be erased, truth and accountability could begin to mend the invisible fractures he had caused. Hours passed. The conversations were grueling, the confessions endless, yet with each word, each act of honesty, he felt a subtle lifting of the oppressive weight. By the time he stepped back into the morning light, the world seemed a little less hostile, a little more forgiving, though the lessons of the night were indelibly carved into his soul. He walked home slowly, each step deliberate. The streets were quiet, almost peaceful, but he felt the shadows of the previous night lingering at the edges of his perception. The house, the children, the man and woman, they were gone physically, yet their lessons and judgment remained, guiding him like invisible hands shaping his choices. Reaching his own front door, he paused, taking a deep breath. He thought of all the moments that had led him here, of the fear, the guilt, the terror he had faced, and the truths he had finally confronted. The adrenaline of the night had faded, replaced by a heavy, sober clarity. Life was fragile, morality was demanding, and choices had consequences that could never be ignored. As he stepped inside, he whispered to himself, a vow carried not just in words but in the marrow of his bones. I will live differently. I will face every choice. I will carry this night with me, and I will never forget. And then, almost imperceptibly, he felt it, a presence faint but undeniable, as if the house in some form was watching still. Not with menace now, but with expectation, a reminder that life would test him again, that the path of truth and redemption was continuous, unending, and often unforgiving. He sat down in silence, letting the enormity of the night wash over him. Tears fell freely, mingling relief with sorrow, fear with understanding. He had survived the night, faced the consequences, and begun the painstaking journey toward redemption. And though he knew the shadows of the past would always linger, he understood, finally, that true courage was not in escaping danger, but in confronting the truth, no matter how unbearable it might be. In the quiet, he closed his eyes and whispered one last line, a reflection, a moral carved deep into the heart of the viewer. Sometimes the wrong door leads you to the right truth, and it is only through facing what we fear most that we truly find ourselves. The night had ended, but the lessons endured, etched in memory, in conscience, and in the soul of a man forever changed.